Hey guys, Melissa here. I'm really excited about this week's tutorial. I'm going to show you how I paint this Godzilla inspired monster eye wrapped in leather. So just stay tuned and I'll show you how I did that. Okay, so here I've got a 40mm glass cabochon. I got that off Amazon. I think is a good size for a pendant, especially if we're gonna wrap it in leather later. So to make a Godzilla eye, you're gonna need some nail polish. And for this guy, I went to the Dollar Tree and they got a bunch of dollar nail polishes. I've got the black for the pupil. For the outer edge of the eye, I have this maroon, this brownish maroon red. And also I have a couple, I don't have an orange. All the oranges I have all have shimmer. I don't want any shimmer in this eye, so I've acquired a couple bottles of Crayola. I'm not even sure if these are available anymore, but simple red and a bright yellow. You'll see how I kind of mix these to make the orange transition in the eye. So for starters, you gotta go ahead and make the pupil. So this is what the grid mat is for. I kind of find my center. I build out my round pupil from there. Fill my brush up, find the center. Nice drop in the center. Like that. You can use an awl. I have a bead reamer here that I usually don't use for bead reaming. I've been using for paint scratching for my eyes. So I'm gonna use this tool to kind of build out my pupil here from my drop. Try to keep it nice and round if I can. Of course, I don't want my pupil to be smooth, so I'm gonna create these little tiny projections out from it. Try to keep it as round as possible. Kind of pulling the color farther and farther out. Of course, if I leave a void, I'm going to have to come back and fill that in with black. You can always draw a template to put underneath your eye. You want to stay perfectly round. So I'm going to come through with my black and fill in those gaps. To me, it looks a little oval, so I'm going to come through a little bit more. Fill in those gaps again. Because when I come through with the final color, which is going to be yellow, I don't want that showing through my pupil. Okay, so my pupil is done, and while that's drying, I'm gonna start applying the color, which is I'm gonna work from the outside in this time. So on the very outer edges, I want to use the black again, and then kind of feather that in, and then I'm gonna use a dark red and then go into my lighter reds and the yellow and mix them into an orange and go straight to yellow around the pupil. But first, I'm going to start off with the black. I'm going to wipe off the excess on the one side. I'm going to leave a glob on the other side of the brush like this, and then just kind of go through and feather it on. Hold on, I need my glasses. Okay, so I'm going to go on the side that I wiped off and kind of feather it on. I use my one hand to twirl it, and my brush hand I usually keep stationary. As I twirl it on. I'm keeping the black right on the edge. I don't have a lot of space to work with on this eye, so I don't want a huge amount of black on there. I just want pretty much the edge. It's going to be covered by leather anyway, but I'm going to come through with my bead reamer once again and kind of scratch it. I come from the inside out, kind of scratch that, scratch off the excess. So I can blend it in with my red easier. I'm gonna wipe the excess off my reamer here, because it's gonna leave little deposits towards the center, which is fine. If you don't like them, you can just keep wiping off your whatever you're using. But it's something that also gives it character. Always have nail polish remover laying around too, in case you make a mistake, because I don't like this area right here, so I'm gonna kind of erase it. So I've got a Q-tip dipped in my nail polish remover. I'll come through and erase it. I don't want all that black in there. I just mostly want it on the edges, so but I'm gonna keep scratching. Okay. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. Next I want to layer on my darker red here. This brush is really wide, so I gotta really be careful of the paint up on the stick that'll eventually come on down. But I want to feather it in slowly. Layer it on slowly here. think I'm gonna put one thin layer here, scratch it off, blend it in with the black, and then come through and put some more on top. Come through again and blend this in with the black. Come through again. Kind of fill in those scratch marks on the very edges. Okay, and I think I'm gonna come in with my lighter red. Actually, before I do that, that's like really light. I'm gonna come through with this red. It says New York Colors, long wearing enamel 131A. Don't ask me if it's still available because I'm not sure, because it was donated to me. Okay, so I'm gonna come through and do a thin line of this color. And it's fun experimenting with colors. If you're making Godzilla eyes or dragon eyes, you're painting them and you flip them over. It's really cool. It's kind of like a surprise when you flip it over. I just put a thin line of that color on. I think I'm gonna scratch that in. Not too far, not too close to the edge. But just to feather out this outer edge a little bit. I don't like turning them over and seeing that harsh edge of color. So that's why I come through and I feather it out a little bit before it dries. I'm going to come back through with my nail polish remover. Back that off a little bit. Okay, that's where we're at so far. Now I'm gonna come in with my lighter, my Crayola red. This is also a huge freaking brush here. All right, this one I'm gonna try to feather a little bit better. I want to leave plenty of room around the pupil for yellow. So for now, I want to come through with yellow along the edge of the red and see if I can blend those together without getting too close to the pupil, because I want that to be pure yellow. And if you happen to have a nice orange that you can incorporate in there, then you can go ahead and use that. But I don't. have an orange, a nice orange that I would want to use, so I'm going to try to blend these two colors together to kind of make my own orange. I think with this step, I'm gonna have to keep going around and around to get it to blend nicely the way I want it to. I might have to add more yellow as well. Coming out kind of cool. I just keep scratching until I'm satisfied with how the front is looking. When I put the final layer of yellow on, I can kind of visualize how it's gonna look with the yellow showing through all my scratch marks here. I think that's pretty good. I hope, because once I put the final layer on, that's it. Whatever comes out of it, that's what you're gonna get. So with this last layer, I just kind of blob on the color, and even though the pupil is dry, it does soften up quite a bit and fairly quickly when I put a layer of new nail polish on it. So I have to be careful not to manipulate the paint above the pupil too much, because then the pupil starts to smear and then it just doesn't look good. So I'm gonna start right in the center and start putting a nice thick layer on and just kind of moving it outward, brushing it outward. Being careful not to smear the pupil. I'm gonna go ahead and cover the whole back of the eye with the yellow color, and it's gonna take a few days for this to dry before I can do anything else to it. Just because of how thick it is, it's a lot of layers to cure. Because before I set it in the leather, I put a layer of a Mod Podge Magic, I think it's called. Yeah, Mod Podge Dimensional Magic. So I put a layer of that on once it's done curing to seal it up really nice. This eye is pretty thick, so I'm gonna have it sit for a little bit before I turn it over. So I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so it's been a few minutes since I've finished my painting, and I want to quickly turn it over to see how this turned out. Cross your fingers, hopefully it turned out good. Just be careful if you're flipping your own over at this stage to be very careful, because there's a lot of paint on it. If you drop it, which I've done before, I've dropped them paint side down, and it pretty much ruins everything. So be very careful. That's not too shabby. I kind of like that. And that's even sticking to my fingers, but I had to see what it looked like, so I think it turned out pretty good. I'm gonna need to let this sit for a few days and just hang tight, and I'll be back in a bit. Yeah, 3 days later, I'm back. It's perfectly dry now. So next what I want to do is add some of this Mod Podge Dimensional Magic. It'll put a nice clear seal on the back of this. It's not a necessary step because the back will be covered with leather. I like to do it anyways. It comes out opaque, but it'll clear up once it dries. So I just put a nice layer on, not too thick, not too thin. And I'm not squeezing the bottle at this point. I'm just kind of pushing it around with the tip. Get it out to the edges real nice. But we'll come back in a couple days and see how it looks then. All right, I am back. It's been 2 days since I put the magic on, and this is what it looks like on the back. It has a nice shine, a nice seal, and this is the front. So I think it's turning out pretty cool. Now what I want to do is wrap it in leather. So what I did is I went to Hobby Lobby and I got some leather supplies. Like I got a bag of scraps. Like right here, this was a scrap of leather. It was in a big bag full of black leather, some brown leather. This leather comes in handy for these little projects. I also bought a chisel. All they had was a 4-prong chisel. They didn't have 1-prong chisel, but I've made this work. I also got some Realeather half-round lace, 3/32. I also picked up some leather needles. Those are also from Hobby Lobby. So let me show you what I do. Let me go over to the side here so I don't waste, hopefully I don't waste much. I'm gonna take a protractor. I want to make my leather about 1/4 inch bigger than my eye here. Mark this out on the leather. I don't know if you can see that. You can kind of see my pencil mark. That looks good, about 1/4 inch. So I'm doing this on the back of the leather, obviously. And I want to make 2 the same size. Before I mark that inner opening, I'm going to cut these out. I'm just going to use scissors. Put my glasses on. And I'm going to cut these out following the line I made with my pencil. It's really faint. But it's there. Okay, gotta line these up, make sure they're the same size, and cut off any excess. Okay, those are pretty close. Now I want to cut out the inside window to kind of act as the eyelids. Let me flip it over so I don't draw on the parts that's showing. Kind of outline this eye. Okay, so this line is the glass cabochon itself. So I want a lip coming over the cabochon to keep it in place. I'm gonna slowly cut this out. Fold it in half. That's not enough, of course. Okay, so I don't want a perfect circle. So what I want to do is come through with an X-Acto knife and kind of sculpt out an eyelid. Ooh, that was weird. An eyelid shape. Use an X-Acto knife or your scissors. Scissors probably work a little better. I like the scissors better, actually. So I'm gonna slowly, I don't want to cut too much at once. Slowly cut out an almond shape to mimic, you know, the eyelids. And do this slowly, a little bit at a time, so you get the shape you want, but you don't lose too much leather. Tiny bit, just need a tiny sliver. That looks pretty good, I think. Let's see. Okay, so what I want to do next, to lace this together, we need to punch out the holes first. That's what we're going to use the chisel for. Okay, so I'm just trying to find center and kind of mapping out a little guideline, like 1/8 of an inch away from the outer edge. I can barely see it, but that's fine. So I'm going to use my chisel as a guideline anyways. I'm going to make my punches at an angle. I'm going to use this second one in as a guideline, and I'm going to bring it right up to the edge. Grab myself a hammer. Like that. Got to chisel it hard enough so it goes through. Okay, so I have my first notch in there, and I'm gonna go around the whole outside of this and keep making notches about 1/4 inch apart from each other. so I've gone all the way around. I'm going to go through again and punch through the same holes to get the holes through the backing. Found a scrap piece of wire to go through my first hole to keep it all aligned. You know what, I'm going to go to the other side, straight across. Keep those straight. Okay, I'm done chiseling, hopefully through front to back. Next, I'm going to take my half round leather. I'm going to pull out about an arm's length, which is probably about 3 feet or so. I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and taper the edge here. So the lacing needles, you pull them apart here, they have little prongs, so they grab onto your lace. So you want to taper the end of the cord here. Pry this open and feed your lace in there. Easier said than done. Let me cut off that floppy edge. A lot easier said than done. Okay, so let's feed that in there. Nice and tight. You want it nice and straight so it's not peeking out on the edges at all. I'm going to take it, lock it in with my mallet so it's nice and tight, all ready to lace. So as you're lacing, biggest thing is to keep it straight. So to start this stitch off, I'm going to be stitching from left to right and going over. So there's 2 sides to this lace here. There's a dull side. It's half round, so this side is kind of domed and shiny. This is the side I want facing out, and that's the dull side. I'm going to have the shiny part facing to the left. I'm going to stick my needle through and pull it all the way through until I have just a little bit of a tail. So now, to keep my lace straight, I just kind of follow it down till I find my needle, and I do the same thing. I flip it like here, and I have my lace facing the same way as I did on the first stitch, and I pull it through. And as I'm pulling it through, I kind of keep the lace straight as I'm pulling. It might start twisting up on you. If it does, just kind of twist it, keep it straight, straighten it out until you get to the twist, and then pull the twist through. Just like that. Still has a little bit of a twist, so I kind of flip it. There we go. Now it's straight. Same thing. I want to keep it straight, so I kind of pull my lace through my fingers until I get to the needle. And now this time, shiny side facing to the left, I'm going to go through my first stitch like this. Just like that. Pulling it through and keeping it straight as I'm pulling it through. So that's the stitch, so you just keep repeating this all the way around. Pull it through. Go through your previous stitch and pull that through. That's what it starts to look like. And this does get a lot easier the shorter your lace gets. And just keep repeating that pattern. To go back. I forgot to go through that stitch. Let's see if I can back my needle through. Sometimes I can't do it and I have to take the needle off, which is kind of a pain. Take that wire out because I don't need it anymore. So now that just about halfway through, the lacing's getting easier. It's not twisting on me as much. And we're gonna have to slip in the eye eventually here, so I don't get past that point of no return where I can't get the eye in. I think I'm gonna slip this eye in there now. Oh, it's gonna look cool. Slip the eye in and just keep on going. these wires out now. At this point, I'm actually going to snip this a little short, go inside and pull it through so it's in between, like that. Okay, so now that we're at the end, I went through and I came out our first stitch hole. I'm going to come up through this way and then back over this way. To keep that stitch nice and even and cohesive, so there's no breaks. So now what I'm gonna do to finish this stitch off is just kind of feed it through. Since this is the back of the pendant and nobody will see it, I'm just gonna feed this through. View the stitching on the back, just like that. So here I'm gonna just go ahead and snip it. Or maybe I'll use scissors. I don't want to dull my flush cutters. And an arm's length did pretty good. So I'm gonna take that off, save my needle. And this is what we came out with. That's the back. Kind of looks like scales. Now I want to figure out which way I want up. So now I decided the orientation I want my eye. So I think I'm gonna attach a leather cord directly to the pendant. So I grabbed about 17 inches of round leather cord in black. And I'm gonna come up to the top here and I'm gonna feed this through about 3 of the stitches, like right on the top. These 3 stitches here. Let's see. Just like that, feed it through 3 of them. So that's how it looks. To finish off these cord ends, I'm gonna go the pre-made route. I grabbed some cord end crimps. All these I got from Hobby Lobby as well. To crimp these on, I like to use my flat nose pliers and do one side at a time. I follow the curve because I like my cord ends to be laying the same way with the curve of the cord. Smash one side and smash the other side. Attach jump rings to these 2 ends. I'm right-handed, so I like my clasp on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and attach it on the right side of my necklace. That's just my preference. There. Okay, so what do you think? Pretty cool Godzilla eye. I've also done dragon eyes in this fashion, so I think this one turned out pretty cool. Well, that's it from me, guys. I hope you really liked this video. Hit the like button if you did. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.